So next video for us, we are going to be watching how movies changed the world, the complete history of cinema. Now, as a reminder, I am a film student. Y'all know I own a video production company, so I'm into visual storytelling. I'm into all that. So let's go ahead and check this video, see what they got for us, and go through the history of cinema.
Have you ever stopped to think about what a miracle movies really are? I mean, seriously, human beings figured out how to capture time, to take light, shadow, sound, emotion, and story and bottle it up in a frame. And for over a century, we've used that magic to entertain, inspire, provoke, and sometimes even start revolutions. But movies didn't just appear, from silent shadows on a wall to computer-generated backgrounds. Movies have evolved, and today we're telling the entire story of cinema. The whole thing, every major turning point, every game-changing moment that shaped the movies we love, and knowing the journey of how movies came to be will make you love them even more. So grab your popcorn, because this is the complete history of cinema. Let's dive in.
Let's get it.
And hit it.
Before movies were movies, they were optical illusions. In the late 1800s, devices like the zoetrope and the phenakistoscope were basically spinning wheels that created the illusion of motion. Yeah, it sounds like a cool science fair project, but back then it was their avatar. At the same time, Thomas Edison was building devices like the kinetoscope, where you could peek into a box and watch short films. Then Edison and his assistant William Dickson unveiled a new type of recording camera that they called the kinetograph. This is widely recognized as one of the world's first motion picture cameras. At that time, nobody really knew what to do with it, but they knew it was something that nobody had ever seen before. Even though Edison and Dickson were known to have created one of the first motion picture cameras, the real turning point came in 1895 when two French brothers, Auguste and Louise Lumière, set up a camera, filmed a train pulling into a station, and projected it onto a screen for a crowd. That film, Arrival of the Train at La Ciotat Station, is considered one of the very first motion pictures. And legend has it, the audience screamed and dove out of the way, thinking...
For context, y'all, I'm a film student, so when I'm saying I remember this, I mean that to say like I remember learning about this. I wasn't there. So don't be hitting me with them Nandi jokes. Don't be hitting me with them jokes. I get it.
Oh!
You know what I'm saying? I get it.
The train was coming through the screen. Whether that's true or just cinematic myth, it captures the vibe that movies were a miracle. Then came Georges Méliès, a magician turned filmmaker who saw movies not just as a way to show reality, but to escape it. His film, A Trip to the Moon in 1901, featured hand-painted sets, multiple exposures, and the famous image of a rocket stuck in the moon's eye. This wasn't just a recording of life or a train pulling into a station. This was cinematic storytelling that nobody had ever seen before. The groundwork was laid, and movies were no longer just moving pictures, they were stories. By the 1910s, film had found its voice, metaphorically speaking. Directors were learning how to tell complex stories with nothing but music and visuals. No dialogue, no spoken lines, just performance, framing, and emotion. Thus entered one of the greats, Charlie Chaplin. Chaplin's character, the Tramp, could make you laugh and cry in the same scene. In City Lights, he falls in love with a blind flower girl, and when she finally sees him for the first time, you feel it. No words necessary. Then there was Buster Keaton, the master of physical comedy and death-defying stunts. The General, Sherlock Jr., these weren't just funny, they were engineering marvels. No green screen, no insurance waivers, just an actor willing to put his life on the line to get the shot. And we also can't ignore the technical brilliance of D.W. Griffith's The Birth of a Nation. It has many problems, but it introduced techniques like cross-cutting and close-ups that defined modern editing. It truly was the founding work for cinematic realism. Meanwhile, over in Germany, films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari turned cinema into a psychological horror show. Twisted sets, painted shadows, this was German expressionism, and it told us something new, that the look of a movie could express a character's inner world. Silent films proved that cinema was more than a gimmick, it was a visual language. Then came 1927, and everything changed. The jazz singer hit theaters with a groundbreaking line,
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet. Wait a minute, I tell you.
It was the first feature-length film with actual audio, what many people at the time called a talkie, and audiences lost their mind. Overnight, Hollywood went from silent to speaking, and actors who had made an entire career off of their expressive faces now had to act with their voices. Some made the leap and others didn't. The truth is that it was chaos. Studios scrambled to retrofit stages and build sound booths, but out of that chaos came a new era of cinematic storytelling, one where music, dialogue, and ambient sound could enhance the emotional impact. And just like that, cinema started sounding like real life.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
With sound came structure. The 1930s through 50s marked the rise of the studio system. Companies like MGM, Warner Brothers, and Paramount were essentially movie factories. They owned the actors, the directors, the stages, and sometimes even the theaters. But this era also gave us undeniable classics like Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, and The Wizard of Oz. Directors like Orson Welles pushed boundaries, while stars like Humphrey Bogart and Judy Garland became household names. And behind the curtain, studios controlled everything. Directors were under contract, actors had zero personal agency, scripts were manufactured to meet demand. Hollywood looked shiny, but it was just a machine. And then came Citizen Kane, often called the greatest film ever made. Not just for its story, but for something that audiences had never seen before: cinematography. Orson Welles and cinematographer Craig Tolland used deep focus, dramatic low angles, and long takes in ways that nobody had ever seen. Every frame was carefully composed to serve the story, and it changed how filmmakers thought about the camera as more than just an observer, but a storyteller. Still, the golden age was golden for a reason. It created the visual language that we still use today.
Your complete attention, if you please.
But while Hollywood polished its image and built its empire, a quieter revolution was happening overseas. After World War II, Italian neorealism emerged, a reaction to the devastation of the war. Films like Bicycle Thieves and Rome, Open City ditched Hollywood glam for real locations and non-professional actors. No sets, no stars, just stories about people. In Japan, Akira Kurosawa is still to this day considered one of cinema's most influential figures. He was creating moral epics with visual precision. Rashomon played with perspective, truth, and memory. Seven Samurai laid the blueprint for modern action films, and even inspiring everything from The Magnificent Seven to Star Wars. These weren't just foreign films, they were global voices proving that cinema wasn't just American, it was universal. It was for everyone. So by now, movies had sound, they had stars, they had stories, but there was still something missing. Enter Technicolor. Now, filmmakers had been experimenting with color since the 1910s, but it wasn't until 1939 that two iconic films flipped the switch: Gone with the Wind and The Wizard of Oz. Both exploded onto the screen with rich, saturated color that left audiences stunned, especially when Dorothy walks out of the sepia-toned house and into the vibrant land of Oz. This wasn't just a new look, it was a new era. And if The Wizard of Oz cracked the door, the red shoes flung it wide open. This 1948 ballet drama didn't just use color, it weaponized it. It proved that color could be emotional, surreal, and part of the narrative itself. It was like watching a painting come to life, and it changed how color was used in film from then on out. Technicolor didn't just enhance the visuals, it changed how directors thought about wardrobe, set design, and mood. Suddenly, filmmakers could use color not to just show, but to feel. And by the 1950s, black and white was considered old-fashioned. Unless it was a deliberate artistic choice, color had officially taken over. Then something else happened. Some directors decided to no longer follow the rules. In France, a group of rebellious film critics turned filmmakers, guys like François Truffaut, Jean-Luc Godard, and Agnès Varda, decided that they had enough of polished studio films and decided to launch the French New Wave, a movement that embraced handheld cameras, jump cuts, natural light, and characters who talked directly to the camera. Breathless, The 400 Blows, these weren't just films, they were statements, and audiences were in awe. And this auteur theory, the idea that the director is the true author of the film, not a studio, lit a fire under American filmmakers. People like Stanley Kubrick, Alfred Hitchcock, Ingmar Bergman, and Federico Fellini started crafting deeply personal, often surreal films. Directors were no longer factory workers, they were artists, visionaries, storytellers, and soon they'd take over Hollywood.
It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business.
Enter the 1970s, arguably the most transformative decade in movie history. The old studio system was crumbling. Box office returns were down. Audiences wanted something real, gritty, flawed, and dangerous. So into that chaos stepped a new generation of directors: Scorsese, Coppola, Spielberg, Lucas, and Kubrick. These weren't just filmmakers, they were filmmaking rock stars. The Godfather, Jaws, Star Wars, Apocalypse Now, Taxi Driver, these films didn't just break the rules, they rewrote them. And we could talk for hours about the cultural impact each of these films has had on the filmmaking industry and filmmakers today, and how these films are still inspiring young and upcoming directors over 50 years later. And guess what? These films made money. Lots of it. Studios realized that they didn't have to choose between art and commerce, but with the right vision, you could actually have both. And behind the scenes, technology was also evolving too. Marathon Man in 1976 was one of the first films to use the Steadicam, allowing smooth, dramatic shots without dolly tracks. That innovation gave us shots that felt alive, like being pulled through the story in real time. Apocalypse Now pushed the boundaries of sound design. It wasn't just background noise, it was psychological. Helicopter blades turning into ceiling fans, Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries became a weapon. The sound mix put audiences in the war zone years before surround sound was the standard. And of course, Star Wars changed everything. ILM, or Industrial Light and Magic, was created just to make the movie possible, pioneering motion-controlled cameras and miniature effects. Suddenly, sci-fi didn't have to look cheap, it could look epic, and ILM is still around today. But with great power comes merchandising. And that brings us to the blockbuster era. The success of Jaws and Star Wars taught studios something very important. Big movies make big money. Thus was born the blockbuster. The 80s brought a wave of high-concept, crowd-pleasing juggernauts like Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Top Gun, Batman. These weren't just movies, they were events. They had toys, cereal, theme park rides, and suddenly, a film wasn't just a story, it was an entire franchise. This era also introduced something new, the summer movie season, a time when studios would unleash their biggest, loudest, most bankable films. This strategy worked, and maybe worked too well because studios are still using the same strategy to this day.
It worked! I finally invented something that works!
But if theaters were for the blockbuster, then home video was for everything else. With the rise of VHS, suddenly anyone could own a movie, watch it over and over, pause it, rewind it, and study it. It changed how we consumed cinema. In fact, some cult classics were born on VHS. Films like The Thing, Evil Dead, Clerks, and Donnie Darko found their audiences after they left theaters. And for studios, this was huge. A film that flopped at the box office could still make millions on home release. Theaters were no longer the end of a movie's life, they were just the first step. By the 1990s, the Academy Awards weren't just an industry party, they were cultural currency. Winning Best Picture could catapult a film like Titanic, Forrest Gump, or Gladiator to legendary status. But it wasn't just about money, it was about validation. Studios started pushing prestige projects in award seasons, and indie films could suddenly punch above their weight class. And as Oscar night became a global TV event, movies weren't just judged in box office, they were judged on legacy. And then the dinosaurs showed up. In 1993, Jurassic Park changed everything. For the first time, CGI didn't look like a cartoon, it looked real. Just 2 years later, Toy Story became the first fully computer animated feature, and in 1999, The Matrix blew our minds with bullet time and digital worlds. The message was clear. If you can imagine it, you can create it. Filmmaking was no longer about what you could build, it was about what you could render. The Lord of the Rings trilogy pushed tech even farther with Gollum. Using Andy Serkis with motion capture, Weta created a fully digital character with emotional depth. It was the first time audiences truly connected with a CGI performance, not just a visual. But as we'll see in just a minute, that also had consequences.
Must have the precious.
Okay, so you've got CGI blowing minds, blockbusters raking in cash, and indie films winning Oscars, but something else was quietly changing the way we interacted with movies. Introducing the DVD. Suddenly, you could watch the film and then watch how it was made. You had commentary tracks, storyboards, behind-the-scenes footage, deleted scenes, Easter eggs, and interactive menus. Filmmakers were now curating experiences on a DVD. Directors like Peter Jackson released the Lord of the Rings extended editions packed with hours of content that I remember watching for hours as a kid. Blade Runner had so many versions that you could form a multiverse. And Kingdom of Heaven, well, that director's cut is a completely different and much better film than the theatrical cut. This was the era when audiences started caring not just about the film, but about the filmmaking. And just as we were geeking out about storyboards and visual effects breakdowns, franchises were taking over.
Did you know that 9 out of the top 10 highest grossing films of all time are all franchise films?
What? I have no idea.
That's not a coincidence. Studios realized that original stories were starting to get risky, but sequels, those are safe, and known IPs, those are even safer. So studios decided to double down. Harry Potter, Pirates of the Caribbean, the Dark Knight trilogy, the Hunger Games, and of course the big one, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. After Iron Man hit in 2008, Marvel changed the game. Now it wasn't just about a hit movie, it was about building a cinematic universe. Each film wasn't a standalone story, it was simply a puzzle piece. And the model worked until it didn't, but we'll get there.
Didn't work.
While studios were building billion-dollar franchises, technology was quietly leveling the playing field. Cameras were getting cheaper, digital cameras started to enter the market, and in 2002, Star Wars: Attack of the Clones became the first major film shot entirely on digital cameras. The results were mixed, but the writing was on the wall. Film wasn't just competing with digital, it was about to lose. On top of that, editing software became available to anyone with a laptop. YouTube launched in 2005, and suddenly a kid in their bedroom had access to the same tools as a Hollywood editor. Movies like Paranormal Activity, Tangerine, and Searching prove that you don't need a massive crew, you just need a great idea. The digital revolution gave birth to a new generation of creators, and while that's amazing, it also meant oversaturation. There are now thousands of films made every single year, and many never get seen. The line between movie and content was starting to blur. By the 2010s, film reels were disappearing, studios stopped printing on 35mm, and theaters switched to digital projectors. Kodak filed for bankruptcy, film labs shut down, and entire generations of filmmakers would never touch a film strip. Digital had officially won the format war. But of course, not everyone surrendered. Directors like Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino, and Paul Thomas Anderson pushed back. They shot on film, and they projected on film, and Tarantino even opened his own 70mm theater. And guess what? It wasn't about nostalgia, it was about texture, grain, imperfections, it was about soul. Digital may be the future, but some stories still need that old-fashioned heartbeat, and that's what many directors are still searching for today. Then came the final disruption, streaming. First it was Netflix mailing DVDs, then it was Netflix streaming everything, and then everyone joined in. Hulu, Amazon, Disney+, HBO Max, Apple TV, Peacock, Paramount+. Suddenly, theatrical releases had competition, and not just from other movies, but from bingeable shows, gaming, YouTube, and TikTok. COVID only accelerated the shift, and theaters shut down. Entire movies like Soul, Mulan, and The Irishman launched online. Convenience won, but at what cost? The communal experience of the theater is fading. Movies have become background noise, and streaming made cinema more accessible than ever and more disposable. And then everything stopped.
That COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
In 2020, the pandemic shut down production, closed theaters, and delayed releases. Movies like Tenet tried to bring audiences back, while others like Mulan went straight to Disney+. For the first time in over 100 years, Hollywood hit pause. It forced everyone to rethink how movies are made, how they're distributed, and what audiences actually want. And coming out of that moment, something crazy happened. Audiences started to want to see risk again. Everything Everywhere All at Once, Top Gun Maverick, Barbie, Oppenheimer. Suddenly it felt like studios remembered how to swing for the fences. Franchise movies started to flop and indie projects started to soar. This was completely the opposite of what it was just a few decades ago. And now we're entering a strange new territory. AI can write scripts, animate characters, de-age actors, and generate voices. The Creator was made on prosumer cameras and upscaled into a blockbuster. The Mandalorian introduced the Volume, a massive 360-degree LED wall that rendered real-time environments with Unreal Engine. No green screen, no location scouting, just a living set that responds to camera movement like a video game. It was a whole new filmmaking sandbox. We're approaching a point where movies can be made with almost no real locations, no physical sets, and maybe no human actors. That's both kind of exciting and also terrifying, because the question isn't just what can we do, it's what should we do? Will authenticity survive, or will cinema become another product of the algorithm?
I don't know.
Damn.
At last, here we are. The history of filmmaking is filled with ups and downs. It's an emotional roller coaster where technology is advancing and saving cinema, while on the other hand, it's advancing so much that we're starting to lose what made us flock to the theater in the first place. On one side, mega franchises, streaming giants, sequels, reboots, and remakes. And on the other, intimate indies, risky stories, global voices, and movies made on iPhones. Cinema today is in a tug of war. Art versus content, risk versus formula, and passion versus profit. But through it all, one thing hasn't changed. Movies still matter. Whether it's Parasite winning Best Picture or a TikTok short that moves you to tears. Filmmaking, like real films, still has the power to make us feel something. So what have we learned? Well, cinema was born out of curiosity. It grew through rebellion, evolved through innovation, and today it stands at a crossroads. But if you're watching this, you are part of the story now. Because the future of movies doesn't belong to Hollywood. It belongs to the filmmakers brave enough to take risks, to the storytellers who care more about people than pixels, and to the ones who chase authenticity instead of perfection. The next great moment in movie history might not happen in a studio. It might happen in your garage, because the next chapter in the history of cinema might just be yours. If all of this lit a fire in you, if you watched this and thought, I want to make movies too, then let me be real with you. You don't need to live in Hollywood. You don't need millions of dollars, and you don't even need permission. You just need the right training, the right tools, and the courage to start. That's why we built Tomorrow's Filmmakers, a complete online...
Bro, I was about to say this is cap. I was going to say you don't need the right trainings or the right tools. You just need the... And I was like, where's he going with this? And I was like, that makes sense. It's a promo. Yo, this guy's cap, man. This guy's cap. Oh! Listen, bro. Like, if you want to start, at the end of the day, all you gotta do is start. Like, align yourself with the right people. Do what you can with what you have. And just continue to put one step in front of the other. That's what's gonna get you to the next step. You know, put in that work, study what you can, and just, again, like I said, put in that work every day, and at the end of the day, you know, you're gonna get to where you're trying to get to. I think that's the best advice that could be given. I'm trying to apply that more myself, picking up my camera and shooting more, and that's a big goal for me next year, and within the next couple of months, I'm setting that up. I'm shooting a lot more, but just like I said, it's just a matter of doing it more and being more active, you know? So, yeah.
I'm getting gritty on these niggas. I'm getting gritty on these bitches. Here we go, another talking again. Hey, yeah. I'm getting gritty on these niggas. I'm getting gritty on these bitches. Here we go, now they talking again. I'm getting gritty on these niggas. I'm getting gritty on these bitches.